He didn't lock the door. That was the scariest part. He gave her every chance to run, every chance to leave him and his terrifying world behind. But when Sutton Mercer backed into the corner of that penthouse, shaking, gasping for air, telling the most powerful predator on the West Coast that she was broken. He didn't hunt her. He didn't growl. He did the one thing an alpha never does. He yielded. "I'm not ready for this," she panicked. He pulled her close, his hand steady against her racing heart. "I'll wait," he whispered. But in a world of blood feuds and hidden wars, waiting is a luxury they don't have. What happens when the woman who can't love meets the beast who can't let go? And what if the only reason he's waiting is because he knows she's the one thing that can kill him? This is the story of the alpha's patience. You might want to grab a tissue and maybe check your locks. The smell of the Riordan estate was the first thing Sutton Mercer noticed. It didn't smell like money, though everything from the Italian marble floors to the vaulted ceilings screamed wealth. It smelled like forest. Deep, ancient pine, rain on slate, and something muskier, like wood smoke clinging to a coat in winter. Sutton adjusted her glasses, clutching her clipboard against her chest like a shield. She was 26, an archivist for the San Francisco Historical Society, and she was currently standing in the foyer of a man who owned half the shipping lanes in the Pacific. "Mr. Riordan will be with you shortly," the assistant had said. That was 40 minutes ago. Sutton checked her watch, a battered Timex with a scratched face. She needed this commission. Her mother's medical bills were piling up at the hospice center in Oakland, and the Riordan family had a private library that hadn't been catalogued since the 1920s. "Ms. Mercer," the voice came from the top of the stairs. It wasn't loud, but it seemed to vibrate through the floorboards, traveling up through the soles of her cheap flats. Sutton looked up. Kaelen Riordan was descending the stairs. He was not what she expected. The tabloids painted him as a recluse, a corporate shark with a scarring temper. In person, he was simply overwhelming. He wore a charcoal button-down with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms that were corded with muscle and dusted with dark hair. But it was the way he moved, fluid, silent, predatory, that made the hair on Sutton's arms stand up. "Mr. Riordan," Sutton managed, her voice cracking slightly. "I apologize for the intrusion." "Your assistant, Sarah, said—" "I know what Sarah said." Kaelen reached the bottom of the stairs. He didn't stop at a polite social distance. He came right into her personal space, towering over her. 5'4" frame. His eyes were a startling shade of amber. Not brown. Amber. He inhaled deeply, his nostrils flaring slightly. A strange look passed over his face, confusion, followed immediately by a darkening intensity that made Sutton want to bolt for the heavy oak door. "You're the archivist," he stated. It wasn't a question. "Sutton." "Sutton Mercer," she extended a hand. He stared at her hand for a long moment, as if it were a loaded weapon. Then slowly, he wrapped his large, warm fingers around hers. The shock was electric. Not a metaphor. A literal static snap that strung her palm. Sutton gasped and yanked her hand back. Ouch. Static. The rugs must be. It's not the rugs, Kaelen said, his voice dropping an octave. He was staring at her with a hunger that made her knees weak, and not entirely in a romantic way. It felt like she was a deer who had just wandered into a wolf's den. Right, she stammered, stepping back. The library, Kaelen didn't blink. Third door on the left. Don't touch the glass case in the back corner. Why? Because, Kaelen said, a small dangerous smile touching his lips. Some history bites back, Sutton. 3 hours later, Sutton was lost in the dust of the 19th century. The Riordan Library was a treasure trove. She had found ledgers detailing land acquisitions in the Sierra Nevadas dating back to the gold rush. But there was something odd about the records. Every 30 years, the head of the Riordan family changed, but the handwriting in the journals remained remarkably similar. Finding everything you need, Sutton jumped, nearly dropping a leather-bound journal. Kaelen was leaning against the doorframe, watching her. He had been watching her for a while, she realized. It's an impressive collection, she said, trying to steady her breathing. But your family history is complex. There are gaps. Large ones. Whole decades where the Riordans just seemed to vanish from public record. Kaelen walked into the room. He moved with that same unnerving silence. He stopped at the desk where she was working, placing his hands on the mahogany surface, trapping her between his arms and the chair. We value privacy, he said softly. Mr. Riordan, you're in my light, she said, trying to sound professional, though her heart was hammering against her ribs. Kaelen, he corrected. And you smell like lavender and anxiety. Why are you afraid of me, Sutton? The question was so direct, so intimate, it stripped away her defenses. I'm not afraid, she lied. Liar, he leaned in, his face inches from hers. I can hear your heart. It's beating like a trapped bird. Thump, thump, thump. Sutton felt a wave of dizziness. The air in the room felt thick, charged with that same static electricity from earlier. I think I should go. It's getting late, you can't go, Kaelen whispered, his amber eyes shifting, the pupils dilating until they were almost black. I just found you, found me, Sutton frowned. I was hired by your assistant. No, Kaelen shook his head, a look of tortured restraint on his face. You don't understand. I have been waiting for this scent for 15 years. I thought you were a myth. He reached out, his hand trembling slightly to tuck a stray lock of hair behind her ear. His skin was burning hot. What are you talking about? Sutton pushed her chair back, the wood screeching against the floor. Sutton, he groaned, the sound rumbling in his chest. I'm not just a man. And you are my mate, Sutton froze. She had read enough fantasy novels to know the term, but hearing it spoken by a billionaire in a San Francisco mansion was insanity. Excuse me, I know it sounds crazy, Kaelen said, his intensity ratcheting up. But you feel it. The pull. The heat. I feel like I'm having a panic attack, Sutton snapped, grabbing her bag. I'm leaving. She moved to step around him, but Kaelen moved faster than humanly possible. 1 second, he was in front of her. The next, he was blocking the door. He didn't touch her, but his body formed a solid wall. Let me pass, Sutton said, her voice trembling. I can't, Kaelen said, and for the first time he looked terrified. If you leave now, I don't think I can stop myself from chasing you. And if I chase you, I might hurt you. Sutton stared at him. Are you threatening me? No, Kaelen said, his voice ragged. I'm warning you. My wolf, he wants to claim you. Right now. On that desk, Sutton's blood ran cold. You're what, my wolf? And then Kaelen Riordan did the impossible. He closed his eyes, threw his head back, and the sound of bones cracking filled the library. His jaw unhinged, reshaped, and fur, thick, midnight black fur, began to ripple along his jawline. Sutton didn't scream. She didn't faint. She did the only thing her survival instinct told her to do. She threw the heavy 1890 ledger at his head and ran for the window. The ledger hit Kaelen with a dull thud, doing absolutely nothing to stop the transformation, but it distracted him long enough for Sutton to scramble onto the window seat. We were on the 2nd floor. A jump would break an ankle, maybe a leg. Sutton, stop. Kaelen's voice was distorted, a guttural growl layered over human speech. She looked back. Kaelen was halfway shifted, his eyes glowing gold, claws extending from his manicured fingers, shredding the expensive carpet. He looked like a nightmare, a monster from the grim fairy tales she used to catalogue. But he wasn't attacking. He was on his knees, clutching his chest, fighting his own body. Don't. Jump, he gritted out. Sutton's hand was on the latch. Stay away from me, I am. Trying, he roared, slamming a fist into the floorboards. The wood splintered. The pull. It's too strong. You're a null. Sutton paused, hand on the cold glass. What? Kaelen took a ragged breath. The fur on his face began to recede. He was forcing the shift back down through sheer willpower. It looked agonizing. Sweat beaded on his forehead. You're a null. You have no scent signature until you're close. That's why I didn't know you were coming. That's why you dampen my control. He looked up at her, his human face returning, though his eyes remained wild. Please. Step away from the window. I won't touch you. I swear it on my life. Sutton looked at the drop outside, then back at the man panting on the floor. Her heart was racing so fast her vision blurred. This was a psychotic break. It had to be. But she had seen the fur. She had heard the bones snap. She stepped down from the window seat, but kept her back to the wall. You need a doctor. I need you, Kaelen said, slowly standing up. He looked exhausted, as if he'd just run a marathon. He held his hands up, palms open. Sutton, listen to me. My name is Kaelen Riordan. I am the alpha of the Blackwood Pack. We control the territory from Big Sur to the Oregon border. You're insane, she whispered. I'm wealthy, I'm powerful, and I'm currently telling you that supernatural creatures exist, Kaelen said dryly. If I were insane, I'd claim to be Napoleon. Look at the scratch marks on the floor, Sutton. Look at them, she looked. Deep gouges, 3 inches deep, marred the hardwood. No human fingernails could do that. Sutton slid down the wall until she hit the floor, burying her face in her hands. The adrenaline was crashing. I can't do this. My mom is sick. I have rent to pay. I'm just an archivist. I can't be part of some teen wolf drama, Kaelen winced. Please don't call it that. He took a step toward her. She flinched. He stopped immediately. He was 10 feet away, but his presence filled the room. I'm not ready for this, she panicked, her voice rising in hysteria. Tears pricked her eyes. I don't know you. I don't want a mate. I don't want to be claimed. I want to go home and eat leftover Thai food and watch documentaries. I am not ready for this. The silence that followed was heavy. Kaelen looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the fraying hem of her cardigan, the dark circles under her eyes from sleepless nights at the hospice, the trembling of her hands. He realized then that the bond, the biological imperative that screamed mine, didn't care about her reality. But he did. He crossed the room slowly. This time, Sutton didn't flinch. She was too tired, too overwhelmed. He knelt in front of her. He didn't try to touch her skin. He simply reached out and took the clipboard she was still clutching, gently prying it from her white-knuckled grip, and set it aside. I know, he said softly. Sutton looked up, tears spilling over. I know you're not ready, Kaelen said. His voice was deep, a rumble that vibrated in her chest, but the aggression was gone. You have a life. You have fears. And I just dropped a bomb on your reality. He leaned in, bracing his hands on the wall on either side of her head. He didn't trap her, he created a shelter. I'm not ready for this, she repeated, a whisper. The Alpha King pulled her close, not in a sexual embrace, but pulling her forehead to rest against his shoulder. He smelled of rain and comfort now. I'll wait, he said. Sutton stiffened, then relaxed slightly against him. What, I'll wait, Kaelen repeated, his lips brushing the top of her hair. I won't claim you. I won't force the bond. I won't dismantle your life, you said. You said your wolf wants to claim me right now. He does, Kaelen admitted, his jaw tightening. Every cell in my body is screaming at me to bite you. To mark you so every other male in this city knows you belong to the Blackwood Alpha. It hurts, Sutton. It feels like burning alive. He pulled back so he could look her in the eyes. But I am not an animal. I am a man. And I will wait for you to catch up. Sutton sniffled, wiping her nose on her sleeve. How long? Kaelen smiled, a sad, crooked thing that made him look devastatingly human. As long as it takes. But there are rules. Sutton narrowed her eyes. Rules? You can't run, Kaelen said, his tone hardening just a fraction. You stay in San Francisco. You let me protect you. Because now that I've found you, others will too. And they won't be as patient as I am. Others, rogue wolves. Rivals. People like Elias Vane. Kaelen stood up and offered her a hand. But we'll deal with that later. Right now, I'm going to have my driver take you home. I'll pay your mother's medical bills in full by the morning. Don't argue. Consider it a hazard pay for the emotional distress. Sutton stared at his hand. It was large, scarred, and capable of killing. But it was also steady. She took it. I'm not agreeing to be your mate, she said firmly as he pulled her up. No, Kaelen replied. We're just dating. Extensively. With security detail. I didn't agree to date either. We'll negotiate, Kaelen said, leading her to the door. But Sutton, yes, lock your windows tonight. Fourth floor or not. I can jump really high. The check had cleared. Sutton stood at the reception desk of St. Jude's Hospice Center, staring at the receipt the nurse had handed her. Paid in full. Not just for this month. For the next year. Including private specialists, a new wing assignment with a view of the bay, and experimental treatments that insurance had laughed at. An anonymous donor, the nurse Beatrice beamed. Can you believe it, hun? It's a miracle. Sutton felt sick. It wasn't a miracle. It was a down payment. She walked out of the sterile white hallway into the cool San Francisco night. Her phone buzzed. It had been buzzing all day. Unknown numbers. Texts from a contact simply labeled him that she hadn't saved. I'm outside. Sutton looked up. Across the street, idling in a red zone under a flickering street lamp, was a matte black SUV that looked more like a tank than a car. The window rolled down. Kaelen Riordan sat in the back, his face illuminated by the glow of a tablet. He looked tired. Sutton marched across the street, dodging a cyclist, and yanked the back door open. You can't just buy my life, Kaelen, she hissed, sliding onto the leather seat. Close the door, he said calmly, not looking up from a spreadsheet. You're letting the heat out. Did you hear me? You paid the hospice. You put a security detail outside my apartment. Don't look at me like that. I saw the guy in the gray sedan. He's been eating donuts for 6 hours. Kaelen finally looked at her. The gold in his eyes was dimmer tonight, like embers dying in a fire. He took off his reading glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. The man in the gray sedan is authorized security. If he wasn't there, you'd be dead. Dead. Why would I be dead? Sutton's voice rose an octave. I catalog books. I drink tea. My biggest enemy is dust mites. Kaelen sighed, a deep rattling sound. He reached into the seat pocket and pulled out a manila envelope. He tossed it into her lap. Open it, Sutton hesitated, her hands trembling. She undid the clasp and slid out a stack of photos. The first photo, was of her walking into the Riordan estate yesterday. The second was of her waiting for the bus this morning. The third was of her sleeping in her bedroom, taken through the window from the fire escape. Sutton dropped the photos as if they were burning coals. "Who took these?" "A scout," Kaelen said, his voice dropping to that dangerous low growl. "Vol, the Vane Pack. They operate out of Oakland. They traffic in things you don't want to know about. They smelled you on me, smelled me, you're a null, Sutton. But since you spent 3 hours in my library, you have my scent all over you. To a rival wolf, you smell like the alpha of the Blackwood Pack. That makes you a target. They think you're my weakness." Sutton stared at the photo of her sleeping. The violation made her skin crawl. "So what do I do?" "You let me do what I was born to do," Kaelen said. He leaned across the seat. The space between them crackled with that static electricity again. Sutton felt her breath hitch. He was so close, she could count the eyelashes framing those predatory eyes. "I promised I would wait to claim you," Kaelen whispered, his hand hovering near her cheek but not touching. "I promised I wouldn't force a relationship. But I didn't promise I wouldn't protect you. You are mine to guard, Sutton. Even if you never let me touch you, no one else will touch you either." "That sounds like a prison," she whispered. "It's a golden cage," Kaelen corrected. "But it's the only place you're safe." He pulled back, the loss of his warmth hitting her instantly. "There is a gala on Saturday. The Golden Gate Charity Ball. You're coming with me. I don't have a dress for that." "The dress is already in your apartment," Kaelen said, tapping on the partition to signal the driver. "Check your bed." "And Sutton, what? Don't wear the blue earrings you own. They clash with your eyes. Wear the diamonds in the box." As the car pulled away, leaving her standing on the curb, Sutton realized 2 things. 1, Kaelen Riordan was an arrogant, controlling monster. 2, she had felt safer in that car with a wolf than she had felt in her entire life. The dress was red. Not a polite, demure red. It was the color of fresh blood, arterial and shocking. It was silk, strapless, and fit her curves like a second skin. Sutton stood in front of her cracked bathroom mirror, applying lipstick with a shaking hand. The diamonds Kaelen had sent, earrings and a delicate choker, caught the light. They were probably worth more than her entire apartment building. A knock at the door. She opened it to find Kaelen. He wasn't wearing the business suits she'd seen him in before. He was in a tuxedo tailored to perfection. But it didn't make him look civilized. It made him look like a weapon sheathed in velvet. The stark black and white emphasized the golden hue of his skin and the predator's grace in his stance. He stopped dead when he saw her. His nostrils flared. His pupils blew wide, swallowing the amber iris, until his eyes were black pits. A low sound started in his chest, a vibration that she felt in her own bones. "You look." He stopped, swallowing hard. He looked like he was in pain. He gripped the doorframe, his knuckles turning white. Sutton, you have to stop looking at me like that. Like what? She breathed. Like you're afraid. Like you're curious. He stepped inside and kicked the door shut behind him. It triggers the chase instinct. Maybe I am curious, she said, surprising herself. Kaelen froze. Don't toy with me. I have spent the last 48 hours taking cold showers and running until my lungs burned just to keep from tearing this city apart to get to you. If you give me an inch, I will take a mile. We're going to be late, she deflected, grabbing her clutch. He let out a sharp breath, regaining control. Right. The gala, he offered his arms. He didn't touch her skin. His jacket sleeve acted as a barrier. The gala was held at the Palace of Fine Arts. It was a sea of San Francisco's elite, tech moguls, politicians, old money. But as soon as they walked in, Sutton felt the shift. People didn't just look at Kaelen, they parted for him. It was primal. Men subconsciously stepped back, exposing their necks. Women went still. They're afraid of you, Sutton whispered as he guided her through the crowd, his hand hovering at the small of her back. They should be, Kaelen murmured. Half the people in this room are shifters. The other half are humans who know who really runs this city. Is that him? Sutton asked, spotting a man across the room. He was watching them. He was tall, with hair the color of sand and eyes that were a pale, icy blue. He held a champagne flute with a languid grace, surrounded by a sycophantic crowd. Elias Vane, Kaelen confirmed, his body going rigid. Stay close to me, he looks. Normal, he's a sociopath, Kaelen said. He killed his own brother to take the alpha title of the Oakland Pack. As if hearing them, Elias smiled. It was a shark smile. He handed his glass to a waiter and began to walk toward them. Kaelen, Elias called out, his voice smooth as oil. And the mystery woman, Elias, Kaelen nodded, stepping slightly in front of Sutton. Walk away, come now, neighbors. Can't I greet the new? Acquisition, Elias' eyes flicked to Sutton. He sniffed the air, confused. That's strange, Sutton held her breath. She smells like you, Kaelen, Elias mused, stepping closer. Overwhelmingly so. But underneath that, nothing. Just static. Elias' eyes widened. The realization hit him like a physical blow. She's a null, Elias whispered, a greedy light igniting in his pale eyes. You found a null. A living, breathing silencer, she is. Off limits, Kaelen growled. This time, people nearby turned. The growl wasn't human. It was the sound of a tectonic plate shifting. A null isn't a mate, Kaelen, Elias laughed, though he backed up a step. A null is a tool. A battery. Do you know what I could do with her? I could walk into the council chambers and silence every alpha in the room. I could be a king, touch her, Kaelen said, his voice terrifyingly calm, and I will mount your head on my library wall. Elias raised his hands in mock surrender. Fair enough. For tonight, he looked at Sutton, winking. Nice dress, darling. It'll look better on my floor. Elias turned and vanished into the crowd. Sutton was shaking. What did he mean? A silencer. Kaelen turned to her, grabbing her shoulders. His restraint was snapping. I need to get you out of here. He knows what? Kaelen, tell me. You're not just a human without a scent, Sutton, Kaelen said urgently, pulling her toward the terrace doors. A null is a genetic anomaly. Your presence doesn't just hide you. If you get emotional, if you get scared, you dampen our wolf sides. You can force a shift back. You can make an alpha human again. Sutton stared at him. That's why you didn't shift in the library. When I panicked, yes. You suppressed my wolf. Kaelen looked at her with a mix of awe and terror. To a wolf like Elias, who struggles for control, you are the ultimate drug. He wants to capture you so he can feel quiet inside his own head. He will never let you go. The terrace was cool, overlooking the bay. Fog was rolling in, obscuring the Golden Gate Bridge. We leave now, Kaelen said, tapping his earpiece. Bring the car around. Code red, Kaelen, Sutton said, pulling away from him. If I can suppress wolves, can I suppress you? Kaelen stopped. Yes, then why do you want me? She asked, her voice trembling. Do you just want a silencer too? Is that why you're waiting? Because I'm useful. Kaelen turned on her so fast she gasped. He backed her against the stone railing of the balcony. The wind whipped her hair across her face. Useful, he snarled. You think this is convenient for me? Sutton, being around you feels like being sedated. My wolf is screaming because he feels you pushing him down. It hurts. Every second I am near you, it is a physical struggle to keep my other half from clawing its way out to fight your influence. He grabbed her hand and pressed it to his chest. His heart was hammering, a frantic, erratic rhythm. I don't want you because you're a null, he said, his voice breaking. I want you despite it. I want you because the moment I saw you, the world stopped spinning. I want you because you're smart and you're brave and you threw a ledger at an 8-foot werewolf. Sutton looked into his eyes. The gold was swirling, hypnotic. Like she started. Crashy. The glass doors to the terrace shattered inward. 3 men in tactical gear burst through, moving with unnatural speed. Wolves. Kaelen didn't hesitate. He shoved Sutton behind him. Run, he didn't wait to shift. He couldn't, Sutton was too close, her fear was dampening him. He fought as a man. The first attacker lunged. Kaelen caught him by the throat, the impact sounding like a gunshot. He threw the man over the railing into the darkness below. Get her, one of the men shouted. Sutton scrambled back, her heels slipping on the wet stone. Kaelen took a knife to the shoulder to stop the second man from reaching her. He didn't even flinch. He ripped the blade out and drove it into the attacker's thigh. But there were too many. And Kaelen was weakened by her proximity. Sutton, run, he roared, his eyes flashing gold as he tried to force the shift, veins bulging in his neck. She turned to run toward the side stairs, but a figure stepped out of the shadows. Elia's vain. He wasn't wearing his tuxedo anymore. He was half-shifted, claws extended, teeth elongated, eyes glowing a sickly pale blue. "Hello, little silencer," he purred. Sutton screamed, holding her hands out instinctively. "Stop!" A wave of invisible force exploded from her. It wasn't magic. It was the null void. Elias gagged, clutching his chest. The fur on his face receded instantly. His claws retracted, tearing his skin. He fell to his knees, gasping, forced back into human form. "Amazing," Elias wheezed, looking up at her with twisted adoration. "You're stronger than I thought." Before Sutton could react, Elias pulled a tranquilizer gun from his belt and fired. A dart hit her in the neck. The world tilted. The last thing she saw was Kaelen, covered in blood, finally tearing through his human skin into the massive black wolf, roaring a sound that shattered the remaining windows of the palace. But he was too late. Elias caught her as she fell. "Don't worry, darling," Elias whispered into her ear as darkness took her. "The king will come for you. And when he does, I'll kill him." Consciousness returned to Sutton in jagged, painful fragments. First, there was the smell. It was a cloying, expensive mixture of aged leather, ozone, and a cologne that smelled like sea salt and rot. Then came the sound, the rhythmic, angry drumming of rain against glass, a relentless percussion that matched the pounding in her skull. She opened her eyes, blinking against the low, amber mood lighting of a room she didn't recognize. She was seated in a high-backed velvet armchair, her wrists bound tightly to the armrests. She tugged experimentally. Plastic zip ties bit into her soft skin, unforgiving and tight. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in her chest. "I wouldn't struggle, darling. You'll only chafe that lovely skin." Sutton froze. She turned her head, her neck stiff. She was in a penthouse. A massive, glass-walled cage suspended high above the Oakland docks. Outside, a storm was tearing the bay apart. Lightning forked down in violent, jagged strikes, briefly illuminating the chaotic whitecaps of the water below. Elias Vane stood by a sleek, black marble kitchen island, watching her. He held a crystal tumbler of whiskey, the amber liquid swirling as he tilted his wrist with a languid, predatory grace. He looked entirely too comfortable for a man who had just kidnapped a woman from a charity gala. "Where am I?" Sutton croaked. Her throat felt like she had swallowed broken glass. The tranquilizer dart had left her feeling heavy, her limbs disconnected from her brain. "Where is Kaelen?" "Kaelen," Elias mused, tasting the name like a sour grape. He took a sip of his drink, his pale blue eyes flashing with a disturbing mix of amusement and malice. "Kaelen is currently preoccupied. He's about, let's say 30 floors down. And he is very, very angry." Sutton's heart skipped a beat. "He's here, he's making an entrance," Elias corrected. He walked around the island, his shoes clicking softly on the polished floor. "But we have time." The security in this building is state-of-the-art. Reinforced steel, biometric locks, silver-infused barriers. It should buy us at least 5 minutes. He stopped in front of her, leaning against the edge of a heavy oak coffee table. He was close enough that she could smell the whiskey on his breath. "Why?" she whispered, straining against the ties. "I'm just an archivist. I catalogue old books. I don't know anything about your wars or your pacts. You really don't know what you are, do you?" Elias tilted his head, studying her like a scientist examining a rare, dangerous insect. "You think you're just a human who happens to be invisible to our noses. A genetic fluke," he laughed, a low, dry sound. "Sutton, you aren't just invisible. You are a void. A black hole in the fabric of our biology. We call you a null. They are born maybe once every 3 generations. You are a biological kill switch for our kind." Sutton shook her head, confusion warring with fear. "I don't want to kill anyone. You don't have to lift a finger," Elias whispered, leaning closer. "You just have to exist. Your presence. It sucks the supernatural right out of the room. It silences the wolf. It quiets the blood. Do you have any idea how terrifying that is for an alpha? To be stripped of his power. To be made ordinary." He stood up abruptly and walked to the wall, pressing a hidden panel. A massive flat-screen monitor descended from the ceiling, flickering to life with a grid of security feeds. "Watch," Elias commanded. Sutton looked. The breath left her lungs. The screen showed the lobby of the building. It was a scene of absolute carnage. Not of people. Kaelen wasn't killing the human guards. He was tossing them aside like ragdolls, ignoring their bullets as if they were stinging insects. But the wolves were being broken. A massive midnight black beast, larger than any natural wolf, with shoulders like boulders and fur that seemed to absorb the light, was tearing through the defense line. This was Kaelen. This was the Alpha of Blackwood. He moved with a violence that was hard to comprehend. A grey wolf lunged at his throat. Kaelen caught it mid-air, slammed it into the marble floor with bone-shattering force, and kept moving without breaking stride. He wasn't fighting. He was erasing obstacles. He tore a steel security door off its hinges as if it were made of cardboard. He was a blur of shadow and gold, a force of nature that could not be bargained with. "He's beautiful, isn't he?" Elias murmured, watching the screen with a twisted expression of hunger and hate. "Pure, unadulterated power. It must be intoxicating to be that strong. To never have to be afraid. To walk into a room and know that you are the apex predator." Elias turned back to Sutton, his face hardening into a mask of bitterness. "I was always the runt, Sutton. The second son. I had to claw my way to this position. I had to kill my own brother to take the Oakland pack. I bled for every inch of territory I own. And do you know what Kaelen did when I took over? He pitied me. He offered me trade agreements and treaties. Elias hurled his whiskey glass against the wall. It shattered with a violent crash, raining crystal shards onto the expensive carpet. "I don't want his pity," Elias screamed, his composure cracking. "I want his head. I want to see him blade." The elevator chime dinged softly in the distance. A polite sound. Elias froze. He checked the Rolex on his wrist. He made it up 40 floors in 4 minutes. Faster than I calculated. Impressive. He reached into the waistband of his trousers and pulled out a gun. It was a heavy, silver revolver, looking ancient and lethal. He didn't point it at the door where the monster was coming. He pointed it at Sutton's knee. Sutton recoiled, pressing herself back into the chair. "Please," she whimpered. "Here is how this works," Elias said, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. He grabbed the back of her chair and spun her around, so she was facing the elevator doors. "If you let him shift, I shoot you. If you try to run, I shoot you. If you want him to live, you have to make him human. You have to make him weak. Do you understand?" "I can't," Sutton cried. "I don't know how." "Yes, you can," Elias hissed in her ear, standing behind her like a devil on her shoulder. "It's instinct. The more scared you are, the wider the void becomes. Your terror is the trigger, Sutton. I need you terrified. I need you to scream inside your own heart." The elevator doors at the end of the hall groaned. The metal began to buckle outward. The steel screeched, a high-pitched wail of failing structural integrity. "Zombie! Zombie! Zombie!" It wasn't a heartbeat. It was the sound of something massive throwing itself against the metal. "He's coming," Elias taunted, pressing the cold muzzle of the gun into her temple. "The big, bad wolf is coming to save you. But he can't save you if he's a wolf. The moment he steps through those doors, I will empty this clip into you. Unless what?" she sobbed, tears blurring her vision. "Unless you strip him," Elias said. "Turn the king into a man. Make him mortal. Make him blade." The elevator doors didn't open. They were ripped apart. Claws black sharp and terrifyingly long punched through the steel. With a sound like a bomb going off, the doors were wrenched from their tracks and thrown across the room, skidding across the floor to rest at Sutton's feet. Dust swirled in the entryway. A low, rumbling growl filled the air, vibrating in Sutton's teeth. The Alpha had arrived. And for the first time in her life, Sutton wasn't just afraid of the monster. She was afraid of what she would have to do to save him. The elevator doors didn't just open, they disintegrated. Metal shrieked in protest, a sound like a dying animal, as claws tore through the reinforced steel from the outside. Sparks rained down onto the marble foyer, sizzling in the spilled whiskey and rain that had blown in through the shattered balcony. Out of the gloom and the dust, Kaelen Riordan stepped into the penthouse. He was in human form, but only by the strictest biological definition. His tuxedo was gone, his dress shirt shredded to ribbons that clung to his torso, soaked in rain and blood, none of it his own. His skin was flushed with a feverish heat, steam actually rising from his shoulders into the cold air. But it was his eyes that froze the blood in Sutton's veins. They were no longer amber, they were molten gold, glowing with a bioluminescent rage that illuminated the dark hallway. Canines, too long to be human, extended over his bottom lip, glistening. He looked less like a CEO and more like a deity of war carved from violence and marble. He took one step into the room, his bare feet leaving bloody prints on the pristine floor. He scanned the wreckage until his gaze landed on Sutton. For a fleeting second, the terrifying mask of the monster cracked. Pure, agonizing relief washed over his face, softening the hard lines of his jaw. "Sutton," he breathed. The name came out as a guttural growl, a vibration that rattled the glass in the window frames. "Stay back," Elias screamed. His composure had shattered completely. He pressed the cold barrel of the silver revolver hard into Sutton's temple, the metal biting into her skin. "One step, Kaelen. One single step, and I paint this room with her." Kaelen froze mid-stride. His body vibrated with tension, muscles coiling and uncoiling beneath his skin like snakes. He looked at the gun, then at Elias, his lip curling in a snarl that exposed lethal teeth. "Let her go, Elias," Kaelen said. His voice was terrifyingly calm, the low pressure before a hurricane hits the shore. "You wanted me. You wanted the king. Here I am. I don't want the king," Elias yelled, his voice cracking with hysteria. "I want the man's. I want you weak. Shift down. Suppress it. Now. Or she dies right here in this chair." Kaelen looked at Sutton. His golden eyes searched hers, frantic and desperate. He saw the zip ties digging into her wrists, the bruise forming on her arm, the terror in her wide eyes. "Sutton," he said softly, ignoring Elias completely. "It's okay." "Do it," tears blurred her vision. "No," she sobbed, shaking her head. "Do it," Kaelen commanded, his voice gentle but firm. "Push the silence out. Force me down. Make me human. It's the only way he won't hurt you. If I am weak, he has no reason to kill you." Sutton looked at the gun. She looked at the man who had waited for her in the library. The man who had promised not to force her, not to claim her until she was ready. The man who was now standing in a room full of broken glass, willing to strip away his greatest defense, willing to be humiliated and beaten just to keep her heart beating for one more minute. She closed her eyes. She felt the fear. It was a cold, constricting knot in her stomach, vast and overwhelming. But beneath the fear, beneath the panic of the victim, she felt something else igniting. Anger. She was angry that Elias' vein had touched her. She was angry that her quiet life of books and tea had been violated. She was angry that the first man who had ever made her feel truly safe was about to die because of her presence. "Do it!" Elias shrieked, cocking the hammer of the gun. The click echoed like a gunshot in the silent room. Sutton opened her eyes. The tears were gone. She didn't look at Kaelen. She looked straight at Elias' vein. "You want silence. she thought, her mind sharpening into a blade. "I'll give you silence." She didn't push the null field out in a defensive wave this time. She didn't let it spill out of her uncontrollably. She visualized the void inside her, that empty, static-filled space that terrified the wolves, and she shaped it into a spear. She focused every ounce of her fear, her rage, and her will onto the man holding the gun. "Stop." The air in the room didn't just warp, it seemed to vanish. The atmospheric pressure dropped instantly. Elias gasped, his eyes bulging. He dropped the gun as if the metal had turned white-hot. He clutched his chest, clawing at his own shirt, his mouth opening and closing in a silent scream. "What? What are you doing?" Elias wheezed, falling to his knees. It wasn't just his wolf being suppressed. It was total sensory deprivation. Sutton was severing his connection to his instincts, to his strength, to the very biology that made him a predator. The static in his head was so loud it was deafening. He couldn't think. He couldn't move. He was paralyzed by the sheer, crushing weight of her power. He was a wolf drowning in a vacuum. Kaelen stared at her, stunned. He was still shifted. The gold still burned in his eyes. His claws were still extended. She wasn't dampening him. She was choosing. She was protecting him. "Kaelen," Sutton screamed, her voice breaking the trance. The alpha didn't hesitate. He didn't need to shift into the wolf. He crossed the 40 feet between them in a blur of supernatural motion that the human eye couldn't track. He kicked the fallen revolver across the room and grabbed Elias by the throat, lifting him off the ground with one hand as easily as if he were a rag doll. Elias clawed uselessly at Kaelen's arm, his legs kicking in the air. But he was weak now. Just a man. A pathetic, ambitious man who had flown too close to the sun. Kaelen slammed him against the remaining glass wall of the penthouse. The impact spiderwebbed the reinforced pane, shards raining down on the streets below. "You touched her," Kaelen snarled, his face inches from Elias. "You put your hands on my mate. She's a monster," Elias choked out, his face turning purple. "She is a queen," Kaelen roared. He didn't just drop him. He threw him. Kaelen's arm moved with the force of a piston. Elias screamed as he was launched through the shattered glass out into the stormy night. His scream faded quickly, swallowed by the howling wind and the crashing waves of the bay 40 stories below. Silence reclaimed the room. Wind and rain whipped into the penthouse, soaking the curtains, but neither of them moved. Kaelen stood at the edge of the precipice, his chest heaving, watching the dark water. Rain mixed with the blood on his skin, washing him clean. Slowly, agonizingly, the tension left his frame. The gold faded from his eyes, replaced by deep, soulful amber. The claws retracted. He was just a man again. A man who was bleeding, exhausted, and terrifying. He turned and walked towards Sutton. She flinched. It was instinct. He stopped immediately. Even now, even after the violence, even with the adrenaline of the kill coursing through his veins, he respected her boundary. "Did I scare you?" he asked. His voice was rough, broken like glass. Sutton looked at him. She looked at the zip ties still binding her wrists. A little, Kaelen moved slowly, telegraphing every motion. He knelt in front of her chair, oblivious to the shards of glass digging into his knees. He found a sharp piece of debris on the floor and used it to slice the zip ties with surgical precision. Her hands fell free. He didn't grab her. He didn't pull her into a possessive embrace. He sat back on his heels, bowing his head, his hands resting limply on his thighs. "I failed," he whispered, the shame heavy in his voice. "I promised I'd protect you. I promised I'd wait. And instead, I brought this war to your doorstep. I let him take you." He looked up at her, his eyes full of resignation. "I'll let you go, Sutton. I'll arrange a new identity by morning. A house in Europe. Somewhere the Pax can't find you. You can be free of this." "Free of me?" Sutton rubbed her wrists, bringing circulation back to her numbed fingers. She looked at the man kneeling before her in the ruins of the penthouse. She saw the cuts on his chest, the exhaustion in his posture, the absolute devotion in his eyes. "You're an idiot," she said softly. Kaelen blinked, startled. "Excuse me, I just mentally paralyzed a psychopath to save your life," Sutton said, her voice shaking but gaining strength with every word. "I think we passed the dating phase about 3 stories ago. Sutton, look at me. Look at what I am. I am a killer. I see what you are," she said. She reached out. Her hand trembled, but she didn't pull back. She placed her palm on his cheek. It was warm, rough with stubble. "Real. You're the man who waited," she whispered. "You didn't break down the door until I was in danger. You didn't force the bond, even when your instincts were screaming at you. You even offered to let me go after you won." She leaned forward. Kaelen went rigid, his breath hitching in his chest. "I'm still not ready," she admitted, her thumb brushing over his cheekbone, wiping away a smear of rain. "I'm still scared. This life. The wolves, the wars, the magic. It's insane." "I know," Kaelen said, leaning into her touch, closing his eyes as if her skin was the only anchor left in the world. "But," Sutton continued, "I don't think I want to do it alone anymore. And I definitely don't want anyone else guarding my cage." Kaelen opened his eyes. The gold threatened to return, but it wasn't burning with rage this time. It was glowing with adoration. "It's not a cage, Sutton," he vowed, finally covering her hand with his own. His grip was gentle, reverent. "It's a kingdom. And it's yours. Just one condition," she said, a small, tired smile touching her lips. "Anything. Name it. I'll give you the world, no more galas. And we order pizza tonight." "Pepperoni," Kaelen laughed. It was a rusty, joyous sound that seemed to chase the last of the shadows out of the room. He stood up and pulled her into his arms, burying his face in the crook of her neck. He inhaled deeply, breathing in her scent, which finally wasn't just static. It was lavender, rain, and home. "Done," he whispered against her skin, his arms tightening around her as if he would never let go again. "I'll wait for the rest. But I'm never letting you run again." Sutton wrapped her arms around his waist, resting her head against his chest. She listened to the steady, powerful thrum of his heart. Thump, thump, thump. "Good," she said, closing her eyes as the adrenaline finally faded. "Because I'm done running, and that is where we leave them." High above the city, amidst shattered glass and a storm that finally broke, Sutton didn't just find a protector, she found her own power. And Kaelen. Well, the Alpha finally got the one thing he was willing to wait a lifetime for. But here is the chilling part. Elias Vane's body was never found in the bay. Did he survive the fall? And now that the world knows a null exists, who else will come hunting for the woman who can silence a king? If your heart was racing during that elevator scene, hit the like button right now. It helps us know you want more thrillers like this. And if you want to be the first to know if Elias returns for revenge, make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Tell me in the comments, would you have chosen the safe life in Europe or would you have stayed with the Alpha? I know what I'd pick. See you in the next story. Stay safe out there.